Today I'm getting a little bit nostalgic. I actually want to talk about the library that made me start composing on a DAW. Yes, we're talking about Symphobia and their new update. Hi there, this is Sam with Second Tier Sound. Really nice to see you here. If you like to watch videos on how to orchestrate within a DAW, you need to subscribe to this channel. And also, my patrons get access to the MIDI files I create for these videos. Anyway, why was I talking about nostalgia before? Well, back in 2008, when I was starting to get into composition and orchestrating for the DAW, I heard about this company called Project Sam from the Netherlands. They had created this library called Symphobia. Most of the libraries I had tried before were kind of stale, they sounded very MIDI-ish, it didn't have a great sound. But this library had a really beautiful sound recorded in a really nice room. And it was sort of pre-mixed. You had these ensemble patches, so you just needed to press a nice chord and instantly you got a very good result. And this was very, very inspiring for me. It was just so fun to create music with this library. And they developed then Symphobia 2 and 3 and 4. Now this library is quite old looking at today's standards, but it still works even today because the quality is that nice and it's really quick to write with. And they also have a really nice update that I wanted to show you. So let's get going. Here we have a spanking brand new interface of the Symphobia engine. And there are no instruments, so you have to go to Library, and then you have to click on an instrument here to load it up. But before I do that, I just wanted to show you, in Contact, you can still get the old interface if you want to. You go into Symphobia, and you click on one of the patches here, and the old interface will load up. At least it's like that when I got this review copy, but maybe that will change, I don't know. If you want the new interface, you have to select Symphobia all-in-one, and then you will get the exact same interface as I am using right now in complete control. Let's take a look at how this engine works before we listen more deeply to some sounds. So as you can see, here we have a nice menu. It's nicely grouped into sections, so it's a lot easier to find. Also, you've noticed you can listen to the sounds now. So you get a little bit of preview, which is very nice. And in the multis, you actually get sort of a song, so you can hear even more what's going on there. And then you have articulations where you can load just one specific one. Anyway, let's just load up the string section here, and you see how quickly it loads up. So as you can see here, it's all laid out in front of you. You can change easily with key switches here, the different articulations. And some of them even have sub-articulations down here on the right side, so you have even more sounds. And then you can change a little bit how you control this, where the key switches are, how you do the dynamics, a little bit how you control the samples. And you also have mic positions here. Quite an easy one, but it's really effective. You can go, more close or more stage. And if you want to have more detailed control, you can go in here as well and change things around. So it's very easy, everything. Symphobia is all about setting up something quickly. Let's look at map. This I will talk a little bit more about later, but I just want to show you, this is where you can map the keyboards if you want to place the instruments in different places on your keyboard. Very, very effective. You can also change the octave, for example, and if you want a chord. And here you can see you can place several instruments at the same time, which I will talk more about in a while. Then we have FX, and they're actually quite good. I particularly like the Master EQ, which is just an easy way of tweaking your instrument if you want it to sound a little bit brighter or a little bit darker. And then it has a limiter, even saturation, delay, equalizer. I use this. It's very quick work if you want to just fix your orchestra to be sounding even better. Settings, there's one thing I wanted to mention here is that you probably want to click this Send Expression CC11 to volume. And that means that your expression fader is also now operable. And then one more thing, you have a cogwheel down here. What I find the more important one is, first of all, the key switches by default, because normally they're outside of your keyboard, and that is because the ensemble patches are so big, and that way I can actually do the key switches on my keyboard. And also down here, you might want to move this slider to the right to the lower latency, because this library doesn't really tax your system at all, and I find that it's more playable this way. All right, let's listen a little bit to this string section. And here in the beginning, we have sustains. Now, on the right side here, you have vibrato, which is the normal patch, but you also have fast attack, which sounds the same, but it's easier to do quick changes. Like that. All right, then you have soft, which is not a Sardino, but just a nicer, softer sound. The initial patch has quite a dry sound, which is good. You want that, you have more control. But you can also add a little reverb, which I find sometimes is quite good, especially for the strings. And then you also have Consordino, which is very lovely. So all these patches are ensemble patches. So that means you get all the instruments in one big patch. So it's very easy to play and get instant restarts. I really like that. So let's talk about the staccato a little bit. All right, and if you want a little bit shorter, you have the staccatissimo. So those are velocity controlled. Before it was the mod wheel, and now it's velocity. Then you have a spiccato. And obviously a shorter one. All right, very nice sounds. Then a marcato. You can actually control that with the mod wheel as well. Then we have the typical mood starter. By the way, all these arcs are not recorded. I'm doing that myself with the mod wheel. Just sounds better that way. Then pizzicato, and pizzicato is hard to get wrong, you know, but I still really like this one. Very good. And then we have something that is new. Not entirely. I mean, the crescendo existed before in the older version, but now it's also time stretch. So it matches the tempo of your DAW. And this is truly great. I found that I didn't use this before because, you know, it only had one certain time, so it didn't really work. But now you can change it in all kinds of ways. You can say how many beats you want. So maybe you have 4 beats. This obviously depends on the speed of your DAW as well, if it's just going to work or not. And then I can also change this to be downbeat. And I can't really show it right now, but it means that it actually follows the marker on your DAW. So we'll land on the downbeat no matter where you play, which can help you quite a bit. That's an idea they also used in the runs library that I also reviewed on this channel. And then you can do it by manual. That means it's just the original sample. It'll be however it was recorded. but then it might not match your DAW. So, and then you have Collegno, which is just typical Collegno. I do find that there are not too many variations in the sound, so it has a tendency to sound quite repetitive. It's true that Collegno in a way sounds repetitive if you don't know what you're doing. It's a very nice sound, it's well recorded, but it's quickly sounding, oh, that's the same sample. Then something I really like here, and some people might say this is cheating, but I really like it. They have full chords in major and minor. In all keys, obviously, and then a minor. They can obviously be hard to tie together, but just as a mood starter for a scene, you know, it's perfect. And you can also have it in the back of your orchestra, really fill out the sound, because it's very well orchestrated. It's very warm sound. And then you also have fourths and fifths, which doesn't really say if it's minor or major, so you can put them on top, and you can create more interesting harmonies that way. Then the same thing again, but high chords, so you don't have the lower registers. Again, I'm doing the arcs with the mod wheel. Okay, and then we're starting to get into what Symphobia is famous for, crazy scary sounds. And there's quite a lot of them. I'm just going to show a little bit here. Cluster short. And then cluster sustain. Perfect for scary movies. And then cluster tremolo. Right. And there's even more of them in effects, and there's a lot of them here, so just listen to a few. And there's obviously the down version, and then we have glissando just with a cello. Down as well, and then some wild textures. Perfect for these creepy crawly movies, you know, when the snakes and the spiders are coming. So anyway, this is pretty much how all the patches work. They're a little bit different depending on the patch, but pretty much the same. And that's why it's so easy to navigate and change the things around. And the key switches are also the same. The brass section is actually one of my favorites. I think all the sounds are pretty good, but this one, I don't know why, I really like it. It's just so easy to create good, warm chords. And in an orchestra, this is a great tool. I mean, if you have a fairly detailed piece already and just need a little bit of brass to warm the orchestra up, this is a fantastic patch. You don't have to worry about each instrument. All the right instruments are used in a way to get that good, warm sound. And then obviously you have the fast attack as before. And then we have without trumpet, which basically make it sound a little bit more hornish, French horn, you know? All right, and then muted as well, which is a nice addition. All right, and then in staccato, it's pretty much the same as before. But if you want to do those fast ones, then staccatissimo is better, you know. And then also muted staccato, which is nice. And even staccatissimo. Then we have sforzando crescendo, which is very typical for brass. You must have this, very important. So. And also time synced here, very important. And then chords again, and these work pretty much the same as the strings, but a little bit difference here. They have narrow or wide voicing, when this is very nice. Listen to the narrow here. And then let's try the wide. Really warm, nice chord. It's perfect to fill up the orchestra. So it's a great tool to just speed write and get what you want here. And then they have the sforzando crescendo, which is great for endings. The only thing I've noticed here, I don't know if this is a mistake, but there is no time stretching here, and that would be kind of nice to be able to change the timing there. And then we have clusters, and these are, again, tons of great sounds for, but there's so many. Each keyboard has many versions. You can just listen to a few here. Sustain. Great for a mat, you know, in the background. It creates instant, you know, atmosphere. Swells. You could maybe do this by just putting your elbow on the piano. I don't know, but you get some nice tuning here. It's very realistic, so it's better to do it this way. And short. And then even more effects here. Nice bends. So there you go. So the woodwind section, I like this one too. You have to be careful with this one. If you play too many notes, as I just did, it tends to sound a little bit too thick. So you have to space it out a little bit. And that's what you normally do in woodwinds anyway, so. It's got a very good, nice ensemble feel, and that's very important in woodwinds. Hard to do with solo instruments. But I have one little critique here. I first find it's too loud. It's too loud if you just play it and use the same dynamic layers. Then I find it's overpowering the whole orchestra, and that's not natural. And then I also find the instruments, they don't really work so well together because you have the oboes and bassoons here, right? But then when the flutes come in up here, I find it's very soft. And they are hard to compete with the rest of the orchestra. Let's see if I do. It's hard to hear the flute, right? There it is. Now, that's probably somewhat realistic, but I don't know. That seems like a mistake to me. That's something I would like to change. And also a non-vibrato one, which is very useful, actually. You don't always want a vibrato. And then staccato, same thing again, sounds very nice. And you hear as I go lower, it changes instruments. And that's something you have to keep in mind, but I like that. It works better when you play chords, I think. That it blends itself really nicely. And then staccatissimo, just a bit faster, obviously. Oh, I messed up the chromatic scale there, but nice. And then something I really like, it's this xylophone that he added, and that lends itself really to this more comical writing, you know. Doesn't have to be it, but I thought about that immediately, you know. Yeah, messed up the writing there again. Oh, the playing, sorry. Then Marcato, same as before, but they do have a non-vibrato version, which I find is very good. And non-vibrato, same thing. It's a different feeling. And I find it's a little bit shorter too, which is good. Grace notes, also towards the comical, I find. Or comedy. But used right, it can also be a nice effect in the orchestra. It adds some extra flair. And then they do have some runs, actually, and they're also time stretched. And for some reason, it sets to 8th note here as by default. And I feel a bar is probably the best. And they're quite short, and it's just major and minor, and there's no differences here. But in the background, in an orchestra, it works quite well, even though you don't have all the scales. But I've noticed if you, for example, go up 2 bars, it does give the warning sound, but you can hear this clearly doesn't work, because it's just stretching the thing out too much. Also, I've noticed that they recorded this with the reverb of the hall, which is nice, but that means it doesn't really matter what I do with the reverb knob on these samples, and that's a problem because they stick out. You can hear that they don't really match. If I have a drier sound with the other orchestra, they just, oh, where did that reverb come from? So that's also a little bit of critique there. Then clusters, it's the same Symphobia effects, and there's so many. You can sit all day, try these things out. So if you're writing scary movies, here we go. You have to get the library and try this for yourself if you're interested. Kind of fun. Try one here, various phrases. There we go. And then also effects on top of that, so it's even more. The birds, pretty funny. And they're all different, so you hit a key and they sound differently. And then different slaps. Overblowns. And wild runs. You have some mixed ensembles, which is very nice. You have a string and brass section, which it sounds bigger than just the strings or just the brass. So we can do... Yeah, the low bass down here. Pretty nice. Otherwise, it works pretty much the same. You can also add timpani here if you have this one. So if you hit harder down here, get an emphasis, which is really nice. Then we have the crescendos and also staccatissimi here, which is even shorter than the shorts. I really like this one. It sounds really great. It's got that fantastic bass sounds that I want. And you could do without trombone, and that you hear when you're up here, not down here. So if we have, for example, we can do with the trombone first. If you remove the trombones, still hear the trumpets, but you hear more of the strings because the trombones are removed. Very nice. It's easy to create something very quickly here, as you can hear. And then we have swells as well. I really like this. I wonder again why there's no time stretching tool here. Otherwise, these swells are very beautiful and you can use them, you know, by themselves. Or chords, obviously, it works really well too. In octaves or in unison if you want a little bit more cohesive sound. So great to create a scene. Actually have something that just starts. Very nice. And then trills. More on this effect. Short. And then again clusters, which are really fun. Try this one as well. Yeah, very good. And then effect. And rips. Yeah, so you have a lot here to choose from. It's just a gold mine if you want all those effects for your movie or your game. Then we have in Octaves, and I really like this one. It's their typical sound that everybody wants. But they have added something I really like that I don't find in most libraries. First, the normal, As I forgot to mention before, there are no legatos in this entire library, and maybe it is because it was done when this wasn't a good technology. I don't know. But it kind of works. You don't really need it. If you play it nicely, do some MIDI tricks, I find that it works quite well. I'm not trying to defend that. I would love to have legatos, but it still is very well optimized, these samples. But what I like about this is that you just heard this typical double, cello and double bass mix sound that you really want to have a low bass. But sometimes you want to add a synth as well, and they've done that here, so you don't have to. Listen to the sound to this. So instantly much thicker, and you might not even know that there's a synth in there, but you get this thicker, rounder sound that is very welcome, especially in bigger hybrid performances. And then they have staccato in Octaves, and I really like that too. And that's what I'm saying. I've found some libraries, they have this sound here with the cello and the bass, but then in staccatos, they don't have it anymore. And especially not in pizzicato. And it's very important. You can do it yourself, obviously, but it's nice to have a patch. And then we have effects, as always. And Colenio hits, which is just the hits. So if you felt like the other one was too repetitive, maybe you can play the normal sound and then put this on top. I don't know. It's almost like a drum in a way. Let's quickly look over the other ones here. We have world, and these are just pre-sampled phrases. This is in C minor, and you can actually change the key if you go in there, but you will always hear sometimes an artifact when you do too much of it. And you can also change the speed of the sample. This is very nice. And you can also change the dynamics of it. So you have some flexibility there. Well, let's just try one of each here. Native American flute. That was short. Let's try one more. And they're more like effects, but they really add that sort of cream on the top to make it more realistic if you put them on top of a big sound that you have. I mean, there's a reason why this library is used a lot by people who create quick songs for TV shows, for example, or cartoons. Let's listen to one more. I was talking there. Yeah, and low whistle in D. Then we have Dystopia, and there's a lot of this, so I probably won't try all of these. I'm just going to show you a few of them. And they're quite good. They're different synth sounds that you can use to create hybrid sensations or just a different mood if you don't just want to go with the orchestral sound. We can try, for example, this one here. Yeah, different here. Was a little bit cut off there, but now it's basically just a drone that goes on. The module here doesn't change the dynamics. You have to use the CC11 for that, or the CC7, depending on how you set it up. The module is actually sort of a filter knob, so you can do things like this. Which can actually be effective if you sort of slowly build it up. It won't have the dynamic volume effect, but it will have a different dynamic effect. So on. And if you play up here, similar but a little bit different. So each key there almost is a different sound there. But let's talk about the multis and how they're really important in Symphobia and one of their greatest features, actually. Let's look at the multis first. And you can see you have a lot of them here, and you can just click on them if you want to see what they are like. Which one should we take? This one. Another one here, Damsels Run. Another one, Are You Entertained? Are You Not Entertained? And these are great. You can load them up and they're a great starter to get inspired. And then basically Symphobia is using a bunch of sounds in one patch so you can use them all at the same time. But I won't do that. I wanted to show you something I find is more interesting, actually, and that is creating your own performance patches. So let's open up something I've started here a little bit, like a cooking show, just to show you a little bit what I've done here. I've added some strings, some double bass here and cello, some winds and brass, and you can look at all of these here. And because they have the same key switches, I can easily change them. So here I have them all at the same time with shorts, for example. I have a whole orchestra here in a way that I can quickly create sketches if I just want to try something out. And then obviously I can do long as well with whole orchestra. That's a great full chord. And there are no patches with the full orchestra, but you can create your own. And here you go. But I've done something here. I have used this map. So I place the sounds where I want them, where I think they sound better. So we can look in here a little bit to map. And the strings, I want them only at the top. I don't want the cellos and the basses. I remove them. I only have, you see, the ones up here. But then I have the double bass and the cello. I do want them, but only down here. So I have moved these sliders to only get them down here. Then the winds, I don't want the whole thing. I actually just want here from the oboe and flute up. I don't want the bassoon in this. Could, but I don't want. So I sort of turn that off by moving it up here. I've also shifted the octave so they sound higher up. We can actually solo it here. Which sounds better to me. And then I have brass as well, which I want pretty much the whole range. I can also change the volume if I find that something sounds too loud. Another interesting thing I haven't tried so much is that I can, for example, I can take the winds here and I can create stacks of notes. So I create chords. It can actually work. The problem is that you always get the exact same chord, so it doesn't follow any scale. But I think it, by principle, it's a pretty nice idea. But I do like the whole orchestra sound that you get, even though it's quite simple. And then and I can create, sketches really, really quickly with this. So basically what you do is just you click on the plus sign here and you add anything you want. And you can have up with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 different layers. And you can create all kinds of different performance patches. And I did a pretty simple orchestra, but you may want that if you hit the lower keys, you get the timpani, and up here there will be an effect maybe, or in the middle there will be just these kind of legatos. You can do almost whatever you want. It's very easy to set up. And this is really what Symphobia shines, creating quick performance patches so you can create music very fast. So what's the verdict on this library? Well, it's quite an old library, and chances are you've heard of it before, probably seen a review on it on YouTube. But it does have this new update that changes things quite a bit. And I also wanted to show you, if you haven't heard about this library before, because it has some interesting features that are worth to look into. So what do I really like about it? Well, it does sound very good. It still stands out quite a bit. You just hit this chord and you get very good instant results. I particularly like the brass ensemble. You know, brass ensemble can be quite difficult to get right if you work with each individual instrument. But in this case, you don't have to worry about it. You just hit a chord and it sounds great immediately. The instruments are where they should be. Now, if you're the person that like to have each articulation, each instrument, then maybe this is not for you. But even though I like to work that way, I also like to work this way because it's very quick to get good results. It's very inspiring, actually. I can get the sound immediately what I thought in my head just by trying a few chords. And the new interface is really nice. It makes everything more cohesive. It's all gathered. It's easy to find what you want. You have this ensemble here and this ensemble here. In fact, these are a bunch of ensemble patches, really, where you get the whole spectrum of the brass or the woodwinds or the strings in one patch. What's great about that is that you can hear the musicians in the samples tuning with themselves, which makes it sound much more realistic. You don't get that when you play each individual instruments in an orchestra library. They have also updated the interface. The swelling sounds, for example, are now time stretch, working with the tempo in your DAW. That didn't used to be that way in the past. So what are some problems? The first one I think about is volume. The woodwinds, for example, are way too loud. Now you can always lower the volume and you're done. But there's not a problem there, is that the balance between the different woodwind libraries don't work. The bassoons and the oboes are overpowering the flute. So if you play a big chord, you can sometimes not hear the flute on the top because the bassoons are just way too loud. And there are some ways to work around that, but it's quite tricky to do it right. And also there are no legato samples and there are no solo instruments, and that's sorely missing. Now I think this library is sort of made more for a sort of a cue working orchestra. You know, you write chords in the background and have a nice orchestra. It's not really a melody maker. This, you can play melodies with it, and the samples are made in such a way that they lend themselves quite well. But it's not the same as legato or dedicated solo instruments, obviously. They do have some sampled phrases that are very nice, but you can only get so far with them. Otherwise, if you consider the price for what you get, quality of the samples, how easy it is to write, and you get a very realistic sound, then this library might be something you want to look into. Now, I obviously have some rose-tinted glasses and I'm quite nostalgic because this is one of the libraries that really made me want to do this more for a living. But I still think it sounds pretty good if I look at other libraries out there today. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this review. If you did, you can always hit the like button. You can even subscribe. And if you want to support me even further, you can become a patron. You can get access to the MIDI files for these videos that I create. But until next time, have a great time. Merry Christmas and hope to see you soon.